Welcome to Becoming Limitless. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to optimize their brain and their body with biohacking. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate brain fog and upgrade your health so you can have more productivity, energy, and growth in your business. I'm your host, Tanessa Shears. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Becoming Limitless podcast. Today, episode 27 is all about how to stop overworking. So if you've been listening to the Becoming Limitless podcast for a while, you know we talk all about evaluations and scheduling and productivity and how to use your brain and have more energy so that you can get more done in your intentional workday. But I think that productivity can be a bit of a double-edged sword. It's one of those things that when you really start to enhance the quality of your work, you start getting more done, you realize that, well, if I can get more done doing, 7 hours today, I wonder how much more I could get done doing 8. And we kind of end up in this cycle that we don't even realize it, but we end up overworking. And this is really creating a lot of that stress that we don't quite realize is happening, but our body is registering. So today's episode, I specifically wanted to dive into what overworking is, how you're knowing if you're doing it, and some examples I've seen with clients that cause them to overwork and they may not even see it. So if you've been listening to the last couple podcasts, like I said, I have been alluding to that we've got a lot on our plate right now, and it can make it very easy to overwork when you've got a lot on the go. So a couple of weeks ago, my husband and I, we were just hanging out and we're like, this housing market, it's crazy right now because we are, going into our second year of being in the pandemic and house prices have literally just gone through the roof. So we're like, wouldn't that be funny if we sold our house? What number would you actually sell our house for? What number would get you to move? And at the time I was like, well, I think I'd need emotionally at least a year to prepare for the idea of selling. But recognizing what the market was like, we were just like, hey, let's throw our house on the market. And I kid you not, 12 days after we even made the decision to sell our house is sold. So we have a lot of additional things on our to-do list right now, including me running a full-time business, being a mom, being a wife. We're now packing up our house. I mean, all the work alone that went into doing the showings and staging our home and make sure it's it's pretty and everything like that, and making sure it's clean for the showings. There has been a lot on our plate, and it is getting very close to the edge of what might be overworking, and it's definitely feeling like it is starting to get a little heavy. So I have committed and recommitted to staying level-headed and focusing on that separation between doing work, whether that means for the business or for the work of the house, and my life, so that I can still enjoy everything. So this is going to be an episode not only telling you about strategies that I use with clients and I've used in the past, but recent ones that I've put in place over the last weekend to really help, because we literally just sold our house. By the time this episode comes out, it'll have been a week ago. So we are in the full throes of moving, which can actually be perceived as one of the most stressful events in a person's life. Knowing I'm going into that and want to keep everything up in the air, I need to make sure that I'm not overworking. So the Thursday and Friday before we sold our house, which was on the Monday, I actually attended a mastermind event. I've been talking about this a bit on Instagram, and it was a full day Thursday, Friday event, which turns into a 6-month coaching program in which we're talking about the process of simple scaling. And one of the things we talked about in this 2-day event was the concept of overworking. And the whole point of this is to learn how to create a sustainable business in which we're not always hustling to get ahead. So naturally, the concept of overworking kept up. And I know in past, I've always kept to my physical work hours, and I'm going to say kinda on that. But what I was discovering through listening to her talk and about some of the strategies she was saying, my coach, is that it's not just the physical work that we need to watch out for. It's that my brain was having trouble disengaging from work and busyness at the end of the day. So this was something I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even recognize this was happening. I had set up work hours before and I had set up my inboxes to be a certain way, but it had crept back in because I wasn't having it at forefront of my mind that something was making a big difference in my work. So if we're going to look at overworking and what the heck it means, when I'm talking about overworking for the purposes of this podcast today, it basically means working more hours than is necessary It could be constantly checking in with your phone. Maybe that's on social media or with your emails or your Slack or your Trello or Asana or whatever software you're using, and never allowing yourself to fully disconnect from your business. When we start overworking, it cuts into our personal time, even when our computer is off. So this is the type of overworking that I want to kind of expand on today and show you how I really rerouted myself in, being present and making sure I'm not overworking, and how this is showing up with my clients. So I think there's actually a really interesting link between overworking and productivity. I often find that we begin overworking because we've lost connection with what really needs to be done. Meaning, if you look at your plan for your business, there's so many extra things on there. And here's a really good example. So in the business mastermind that I'm in right now, my coach had me create a 30-day innovation cycle. So this is basically what I'm going to test in my business, and what I'm looking for results, what I'm willing to fail at, what I'm going to be trying, implementation deadlines, and all of that stuff over the next 30-day cycle, and then evaluate what was working and what didn't work, right? So I created this innovation plan, and I was like, this is amazing. It's so thorough. And I submitted it to her for feedback, and her feedback to me was, is all of this really essential? And I was like, oh, I was looking at it and I was like, no, not all of it is essential. I was planning for all of these things, but when I actually had to look at my plan a second time and say, what of these things that I have on my action and my to-do list is actually going to contribute to the result I'm looking for to scale my business, I was able to eliminate so many things. And then she came back and said, now how does that feel? And I was like, it feels like there's so much space in my business now. Like, if all I really want to be focusing on is my podcast, guesting on other people's podcasts, and webinars to help bring value to my audience. I mean, this is outside of my client work. This creates so much space, and I'm not getting lost in the nitty-gritty of all the small details and things that I need to do and think I should do that's not moving my business forward. And I was like, this is so interesting. I'd lost connection with what really needed to be done. And so I turned that into overworking to help compensate because I had planned so many things. So that's the first link. The second link between overworking and productivity is that the hours that you are working are no longer productive. Your brain is not sharp, it's not clear, it's not focused, it's foggy. So you're taking much longer to do the same task than would have taken you if your brain was sharper. So what ends up happening is all of that work that you're not getting done in a day, which you thought you could get done, or maybe stuff is taking a lot longer, it starts spilling over into non-work time. And if it's not checked and addressed, what ends up happening is it just becomes the status quo, and you start to become the person that can't disconnect, always checking in, working late nights, working weekends, and you don't end up enjoying the life that you've actually been trying to create with this business in the first place. I mean, if you think about why we as entrepreneurs start our businesses, it's not only to have impact and help people, but it's to create the entrepreneur lifestyle. We want to be able to work where we want, when we want to be able to work with the people we want to. We want that flexibility so that if we want to book something in the middle of the day, we can arrange our schedules for that, but we actually end up losing the lifestyle at the expense of overworking. So it is something we need to check if we want to stay in integrity with what we wanted from creating our whole business in the first place. So I want to bring this back to biohacking, because biohacking, remember, is about creating that sense of well-being in your body, in your mind, in your soul, in your life. And that well-being is optimized by your internal and your external environment. So by constantly working too many hours or constantly being mentally engaged in your business with no separation, that affects your internal environment, which leads to overwhelm. It can lead to stress. It can lead to feelings of not doing good enough or not doing enough or not getting there fast enough. And all of this really clouds our ability to stay focused. So this absolutely is biohacking. It is biohacking our brain so that we can stop overworking and learn to enjoy our life and our business. But I want to give you a couple client examples of when overworking becomes who we are instead of part of a business we run. So I have a client right now, and I know for a fact that she never intended to overwork, and it is something that has crept in over time. So she actually runs multiple successful businesses, and as she slowly added in team members, and as she added in businesses, and as she added in revenue streams, it ended up swallowing her up. And I think she said she has 17 staff working for her right now, and managing all that and all of these businesses, and just one more meeting and just one more meeting and just one more client. And what ended up happening was it took up so much of her schedule that when she came to work with me, she's like, you know what? I start work at 6, I shut off at midnight. This happens all the time. And on the weekends, I'm constantly checking in. And she was just feeling that really run down experience in her body. And she was having to sacrifice sleep. When we started, she was consistently sleeping about 2 to 3 nights or 2 to 3 hours per night for weeks on end. And we now have her sleeping, around 5 to 7 hours a night. And that is a significant improvement. But we're learning to create space in our schedule for food and movement, all things which had been sacrificed at the expense of her business. And more than that, her emotional well-being, just that feeling of being run down and exhausted all the time. And I have a second client actually that's just recently started, and she actually finds that she's overworking because she's bored. She's finding that, her workday should be ended, but her partner doesn't get home for a while. So she just ends up filling that time with work because she doesn't think she has anything else to do during that time, and it seems like a really good use of her time. But what she's sacrificing is her life outside of work, enjoyment of hobbies, and doing things just for fun, and recognizing that our business, we don't have to be our business. We should be able to step out of our businesses and enjoy our life. And I often find so many people I talk to, we tell ourselves that we don't have time for things because we work so much. I don't have time to get 8 hours of sleep per night. I don't have time to meal prep. I don't have time to, get 5,000 steps a day minimum, or get out and move my body, or practice, journaling or winding down, or allowing my brain to just relax. I don't have time to read a book for fun. It has to be a personal development book. So at least I'm optimizing this time, listening to podcasts while we're in the shower and on the road and on our walks. And there's never that contrast between when our brains are thinking about our businesses and when we're just enjoying time. And the problem is, when we think that we don't have time, our brain is going to continue to look at our lives and find evidence for why your business takes up so much time and why you don't have time to do the things that are going to take care of your body. And the worst thing is, we tell ourselves, it's just for now. Just this season. It's just this project. It's just until I reach 5K months, or it's just until I reach 6-figure years, or it's just until I cross that $1 million mark. We always have these time horizons that we're like, no, I'm going to start taking care of myself then. Things are going to get better. And we never intend this, but this is always what ends up happening. So this is your call right now, your sign if you've been looking for it, that it is essential that we pump the brakes and recognize what is going on. Bring it into our awareness that we are always just doing one more thing, doing one more event, just until the end of this season in my business. And if we're not aware of that, our life becomes one long busy season, and we never intend for this to happen, but we end up becoming our businesses instead of being the CEO of our businesses. And the problem is, this creates a culture in your company of always being connected, whether it is just you, or you have a virtual assistant, or you have a team. How you show up to your company is how your employees and your staff and your consultants expect themselves to work. If you are on your email at 11:55 at night, checking in to make sure everything's fine, I know from personal experience that we hold others to the standard that we hold ourselves to. So what ends up happening is, whether we intend for it or not, our staff and our assistants and our contractors and our team, they end up thinking, well, do I have to be connected at all times? Am I allowed to have this? And what ends up happening is we end up having teams that have high turnover. And if you've ever had a staff turnover happen to you before, and I've had it actually to 2 clients happen in the last couple months, where they have had integral people in their teams, their assistants or their virtual assistants, quit on them, it is incredibly stressful. Not even just picking up the slack of the work that is missed, meaning, oh my gosh, now I have to do all of this extra work and fit in my regular week, but you have to train someone else. It is a large drain on your energy and your time to constantly be training new people. And if it is because of a culture we have created in our company, and if it's at all related to that, this is something we have control over. As entrepreneurs and CEOs in our business, we lead from the top down. If you already have a team in place, think about this. Like, what kind of standard are we setting for our staff? Do we answer emails and calls and Slacks and stuff like that on non-work hours? Or are we kept within our boundaries that we set for ourselves and are honoring? And if you don't have a team right now, this is the most important time for you to be developing this practice of honoring a schedule and setting up the culture that you want to create for the company you're going to have in 4 years from now and 10 years from now. And I am so passionate about seeing entrepreneurs thrive and have teams around them that feel rested and sharp and supported by the leader of the company. So it is so important. I just wanted to make sure I said that. But what I want to kind of shift into now is that idea of finding balance. So I want to point out right off the top that this whole problem of finding balance is problematic. It's the same as finding motivation. You don't go out and find motivation. You have to generate it. The same way we have to generate balance. It's not something that you go out and look for or something that just happens to happen to us. We have to create it. And now I do want to say that I am a firm believer in ebbs and flows. And I do believe that there are seasons of work and seasons of recovery in our business, which means if we're heading into a launch, there is going to be a lot more time devoted to the marketing, to the sales page design, to the landing page design, to the email copy, to the post. Yes, that is going to be a season of work, but it needs to be balanced intentionally with a season of recovery. And this is something that you plan into your work hours so that you aren't finding yourself in like perpetual launch mode or literally going from one project to the next just because, it seems just like the perfect timing to do it right now, or nobody else can do this, or I really need to hit this revenue goal, but it's always at the expense of your mental health and your life. So we got to find some balances here. But the other thing I wanted to just offer you is that idea of, instead of fighting seasons of recovery or fighting busy seasons, lean into them. I know for me, I have personally intended that the next 6 weeks for me are going to be a busy season. I am planning a soft launch of my Becoming Limitless coaching consulting program. I am in this mastermind, which just started up. I sold my house. There is going to be a lot on the plate. My downtime might not look like going out for extra walks in the evening. It might be looking like packing, but that is something I am going to be super intentional about, knowing that at the end of this 6 weeks, when the end of June hits, I am planning in a season of recovery and I'm leaning into it. I am prepared and my brain is not going to be entitled and complain about being busy, and it's not going to complain about recovery, but it has to be something you think about ahead of time. So by now you might be getting the idea of like what overworking, is, but I want to show you what it looks like, because some of us say, I'm not overworking, I just really love my business. But I want you to just take a moment and open up your awareness to some of the things that I'm going to say does count as overworking. So just check this out. You might be overworking if you have never set work hours. You might be overworking maybe if you've actually set the hours, but you're not honoring them, or the edges are getting blurry. Meaning if you intend to shut your computer down by 6 o'clock to spend time with family, and it ends up being 6:30 more than not, and then 6:40, and then 6:45, that's a good indicator that we might be overworking. Maybe you're working a ton of hours and doing more than you need to. Maybe you're taking client calls and meeting outside of your designated work hours, or just taking them at all hours of the day because you don't have a schedule in place. Are you doing more in your business just to do more. This was the problem that I actually just got checked on last weekend, is that I was doing more because it felt like, well, more is good, right? More has to be better, more gets better results. But realizing that, creating that simplicity really is going to allow me to create better ideas and serve my clients a lot better. What about working to escape from being bored? Meaning, let's pretend you're home alone and it's the day you're supposed to be relaxing. Maybe you are going to go hang out with someone or go for a walk or work out, but you're bored and it just seems like I've got nothing else to do. So you're filling your downtime with work. Or you're thinking about work on non-work time. This is another example of overworking that we don't recognize is overworking. So it doesn't just have to do with sitting at your desk, working on your computer or your tablet or your phone. It can literally be that your brain is overworking and not disengaging. You can't stop thinking about it. Or maybe you're checking in with your email or your phone just to make sure there are no messages, or just to make sure there are no fires to put out, or just to make sure that, everything is going okay and you have a full grasp of what's going on. Or you're responding to social media all the time. You always need to feel like all the comments are responded to right away. The messages are addressed right away. That, everything gets the right amount of likes, and you're wanting to make sure that your post was received well. Or perhaps you're mentally missing out on life and family because you are so distracted, or you're spending your time with them thinking about work or checking into work. Like, what if you just wanted to watch a movie with your partner? Why is our phone in our hand, flipping open our Gmail, flipping open our Slack channel, flicking open our Instagram, just to make sure, just to feel like you're tapped into your business? And I think the scary part of this is what we end up telling ourselves. We tell ourselves that it's fine. I'm fine. I don't feel stressed out. I enjoy my business. And you're right. You might enjoy your business, but it's a slippery slope. And if we're telling ourselves it's always fine, these are the entrepreneurs that end up compromising the quality of their sleep and their nutrition and their movement and their mental space and their time with their family, because it's fine and it's fun. And the thing I notice over and over again is what takes a back seat to overworking is your health. And when your health goes, so does your ability to be clear and sharp. And this is what allows us to be entrepreneurs that solve big problems and grow our companies and have high-level thought and show up as thought leaders in our industry. If we don't have our health, if we go down, the business goes down. It is not something that is optional if you want a long-term sustainable business. Yes, you can completely ignore your health, barely sleep, eat noodles, and do all of this for a short period of time, but you are going to burn out and your business is going to take over your life. Boundaries need to be set. And like I said before, we tell ourselves it's just for now, but we don't really mean it. And we have no deadline. Like, remember before how I said to you, now is a busy time in my life with the move and the launch and the mastermind and everything? I have a deadline of June 30th for when I'm going to schedule in a week of recovery or 2 weeks of recovery, depending on how I'm feeling. I have a deadline. When I talk to clients, though, they're like, no, I just have to launch this one more thing, run this workshop, do all of these things, but there's no deadline and no intentional rest scheduled in. So we need to be aware of that. And the other one, like I said, telling yourself that you enjoy it and it's fun and I want to spend all my time on business. But you don't have time outside of your work to have your life. So now that we can see that all of these ways that overworking is actually creeping into our business, to our life, I want to show you some strategies about how I actually stopped overworking and really was able to now have the energy I needed to be with my family at the end of the day, and more importantly, to feel present. I wasn't just physically there, I was mentally with my family and getting out of the relationships what I wanted to. You know what I mean? That connection and just feeling bonded. And I think we miss that when we're constantly checking our phones and thinking about our business. So we got to start creating some boundaries. That's the first thing. So we need to set work hours. Even if you feel like you're a creative type and you like flow and you need to wait until you're inspired, if that's not working for you, consider that another possibility feels just as good, but shows up in a way that you might not be expecting. So set your work hours. Now, here's the thing. They don't have to be consolidated hours. Like you don't need to say I'm working from 8 till 4. Like for me, just with my schedule and as a mom, I have like a 15-month-old baby, I work from 6 to 8:30 most mornings. Like right now it's 8:18 a.m. in the morning and I'm recording this. I am watching my daughter on the baby cam right now and she is rolling around in her crib and I will be waking her up in about 15 minutes. But I know that I work during this block. Then I hang out with her. I close down my computer. I am fully present and engaged with her until she goes down for a nap and I get back to work. And some days I have childcare and it helps out. Some days my husband watches her. And those days I'm able to do longer blocks. But don't be limited by the idea that you need very long consecutive blocks of work to get a lot done. If your brain is clear and optimized, like using all the strategies we've discussed on this podcast, 2.5 hours is more than enough to sit down and get a whole bunch of stuff done. This morning alone, I have planned for this podcast, wrote in the description, written the newsletter, checked in on social media, responded to all my client emails, and now I'm recording this podcast all within 2 hours. It is completely doable when you know when it is time to go to work, you work, and when it's time to rest, you rest. So one of the things I did when I was setting my work hours is I figure out, okay, if I had no restrictions on my work, what are all of the hours in the week that I am available to work? And I look at that, and I know for me, I had about 42 hours that I had the capability to work. Then I looked at those hours, and I decided what I wanted to work based on what needs to get done. So I actually went through and I listed out everything that I do in my business from, pitching guest podcasts, working with clients, writing social media posts, editing and recording the podcast, setting up for the podcast. Like the list was long. All the things that I do in my business. And I was like, okay, what of these is actually necessary? And I went through and I crossed out the ones that weren't. And then I slotted out the stuff that needed to get done back into my schedule and chose the hours I wanted to work based on what needed to get done. I didn't choose to work 42 hours because I had 42 hours available. If my business only requires 25 hours a week, why am I taking 42 hours? What am I doing with that time that is either not moving my business forward or it is ineffective use of time? So what you can also do is just quickly, have a notepad on your desk and jot down what you're doing during all hours of your workday for a week and just get a good idea. Like, hey, I didn't realize I was spending so much time, writing social media posts. I didn't realize I was spending so much time replying to email. And then that makes it really clear, like, what of this can I outsource? What of this can I scale back? So create boundaries by setting yourself work hours. Now, in complement to this is learning how to set mental work hours, and mental being the case, meaning in your brain, what hours are you allowing your brain to engage with work? This means thinking about clients, thinking about emails, thinking about what you're going to do for your launch next week, thinking about a podcast review that you got, thinking about all of these things is included in your work hours. And we need to learn how to disengage with work inside of our brain. And it takes practice. It's not something that we just decide and be like, oh, I'm just not going to think about work anymore. Because if you're an entrepreneur, how many of us notoriously say like, oh my gosh, I think about our business all the time, 24 hours a day. I wake up thinking about it. I go to sleep, and we kind of wear it like a badge of honor that we're like so invested in our business. But I respect the entrepreneurs that have the life that they want and have their business. It doesn't have to be one and the same. And like I said, not engaging in work all the time takes practice. And what I have found personally is I need to be very firm and tell myself no. I build up very strong boundaries in my mind with work. I even have conversations with myself where I will say, Tanessa, this is not work time. Tanessa, this is not time I have designated to think about my clients. This is not time I have designated to worrying about something that, a response I got on social media, or did I reply fast enough to this client, or did I book this interview? Like, this is not time to think about this. After I have told myself that, I remind myself, just like you would to a child, being like, you know what? I understand that you want to engage in your business, and I understand it feels fun, or I understand it feels comforting or safe, or like you have control, or whatever it is. But it's okay. You can just take a breath. you don't need to do this now. Your work will wait for you. And then I redirect my thinking. What do I want to think about? Is it a new book I'm reading? Is it the fact that I'm on the floor with my daughter and she needs my attention right now? Is it that I'm exercising and I should be tuned into my body instead? Or am I having a conversation with my husband and am I actually present? So I have a client, I actually just had a discussion with my client over the last week when I was asking her, I was like, hey, why do you think you always need to check in on the weekends with your email? Because she had told me, like, I have a boundary. I don't work on Sundays. I said, yeah, do you check your email? She goes, all the time. I said, why? She goes, well, because I'm worried I might miss out on something, or there's a fire I have to put out, or a client says something. And I really want you to check that, because those are all sets of beliefs. I often had that thought before that, like, oh my gosh, they'll think I'm a bad business owner if I don't respond on Saturday, or they'll think I don't care about them if I don't get back to them right away. Or what if there's a problem that comes up and I'm not there to solve it? And this is a set of beliefs that you need to question. And one of the ways I actually did that was I asked my clients, I was like, what do you think when I don't respond to your messages on the weekend? And you know what they all said? It's the weekend. Why would you respond to my messages? I was like, oh my gosh. This whole sense of panic and connection and constant need to be checking in, I have completely created in my head. It's not even real. If you set the expectation for yourself and your clients and your contractors that I respect my time, I don't respond to messages on Saturday, Sundays, they will expect that of you too. So I always make sure I'm very clear. I don't respond on Saturday, Sundays. And more important than that, I don't check on Saturday, Sundays, because I have found this fascinating. This was something I was talking to my client about. I'm like, well, if a problem comes in via email and you said you don't respond, what is the point in checking it? She's like, well, I feel like I just need to know. And this is our brain's way of feeling like we need to be in control so that we can worry about it ahead of time. Like, have you ever honestly opened your inbox and there's a problem in there, but you told yourself you weren't going to respond, and then all you think about is that problem until you get back into work on Monday, and you can't be present. It just ruins your entire weekend. So this is my call to you. Set those work hours and not only honor them physically with time you're spending in your business, but honor them with your brain and your mental space, and give yourself some space. We have to be firm about honoring them. And I'm going to be the first to say, this is going to be hard. It is going to be physically uncomfortable. I often get really fidgety. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to be entertained. I need to work. I have to just, you know what I'm talking about, right? But I'm willing to go through that to get my life back. I am willing to have that discomfort, to have the freedom, to have my mental space, to have the relationships that I want, and feel connected in those relationships and feel present and here. So sometimes I do stuff to distract myself. It's not like the best strategy in the world, but it works. What do? Sometimes I'll watch Real Housewives. Sometimes I will do laundry. Sometimes I'll just put my shoes on and go out for a walk. But I am training myself and my brain that I have a life outside of my business. So one last strategy I'm going to tell you about that I actually use, and I've had this strategy in place for a long time, but updated it recently. So you know how when you upgrade to a new phone, there's usually nothing wrong with your old phone, but we keep it anyways, just in case the first one breaks. I don't know. Am I the only one that does this? But essentially, we have these two phones. And here is what I have used this phone for to help me disconnect. I have taken all social media off of my primary phone and put it onto the old phone, because the old phone still accesses the internet, and we don't really need our ability to call on our service plan to go on Instagram and Facebook. But I found that by removing that from my personal phone, I was a lot less tempted to click onto all the different apps while I was watching a TV show, while I was out on a walk. And separating my social media world from my personal world was a huge help. So what I actually did last weekend, after really, analyzing this and taking some time to think about it, after we had that conversation in the mastermind, was I'm going to go full out on this. I actually created a whole new email address that nobody knows about and hooked my personal phone up to it. Because you know how a lot of phones usually run off of your Apple email or your Google email, and then everything is kind of all linked, so you kind of see work anyways, even if you don't mean to check it. Like literally on my personal phone now, there is no connection for me to my business. I can't access Trello. I can't access Google Drive. I can't access Gmail. I can't access social media. My phone, all it can do besides operate my Oura Ring and my Fitbit, all it can do is text and call. The original purpose of our phone. It has been such a wonderful thing. And here's the kind of scary thing that I've actually noticed. I find myself picking up my phone and my thumb like ghost clicks. It automatically clicks. I don't even recognize in my brain this is happening. It just clicks on the Gmail. But now it opens up the Gmail app and I stare at nothing because nobody in the world knows this email that I have my phone hooked up to now. And I'm staring at this nothing. And it is when I see no emails, I'm like, what am I doing in here? I didn't even want to check my email. And I started noticing as this week is going on, how much less infiltrated by my work I feel because I don't always know what's going on. And I have decided for myself that is okay. Not everyone is going to want to do this, but for me, it feels so freaking good. So I would love you to think about how you are overworking, creating boundaries in your schedule, boundaries in your mind, and even a physical boundary between your phones to help you stop overworking and enjoying the lifestyle that you are starting to create with your business. So I know for a fact that unlearning how to overwork can be challenging, right? And learning how to create space in our life for our body and our brain health, it is going to be critical to the sustainable long-term success of your business. I'm going to say it over and over again because it is so important. I can help you create a sustainable business and a sustainable brain to run it. I would love to work with you. If this is something you're like, I need help. I need to get my brain back. I need to get my life back. I would love for you to reach out to me on Instagram, email me, go to my website, tanessashears.com, and book a consult to work with me to get started. This is the first step to developing the sustainable culture in your business that you want 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. If you have been waiting, I am so passionate about helping entrepreneurs get their businesses and their lives back in a way that feels good because they are taking care of themselves, their sleep, their movement, their nutrition, their ability to not overwork, to create boundaries, and to develop a CEO self-concept, which creates just freedom in your business. And this is what we can do together. So like I said, reach out to me however you want to find me. Instagram, email, go to my website, book in a consultation, and let's get started on creating your life as the most sustainable, energetic CEO that you can be. We will talk to you guys next week. Have a wonderful week. Bye. Ready to begin each day feeling energized and focused? I'd love to work with you one-on-one. In my Becoming Limitless program, you're going to learn how to optimize your brain and body with science and biohacking so you can be highly productive and grow your business faster. Join me over at tanessashears.com/work with me. I'll see you there.